I decided to do a research project on fish in Silverbow Creek, and CFWEP, the Clark Fork Watershed Education Program, came to talk to my class, and we went on a field trip, and I got into a discussion with one of the professors, Dr. Alvarado, and she and I were talking about the myth that there are no fish in Silverbow Creek, and what we actually found was that there are fish in Silverbow Creek, just not in a certain section, which we found out that in a restored section was the section that there actually weren't fish, and in a newly restored section there were fish. So I went on and I wanted to find out why this was. So the first thing that I did was we looked at the water quality in the stream, and the only thing that I found at the Silverbow Creek at Rocker were conductivity and pH were not the only two things in the water that weren't within normal range, whereas everything at Miles Crossing, which is the newly restored section, was within normal range. And the only other thing that I noticed was down here at the bottom, ammonia, nitrates, and nitrites were a little bit higher at Silverbow Creek at Rocker than at Miles Crossing. So I think that that might have something to do with it, but really I need to probably do quite a few more samples before I can come to any conclusion on if the water quality has to do with anything with why the fish aren't there or not. The next thing that we did was we looked at the macroinvertebrates in the stream, and at the Silverbow Creek at Rocker site, we found that the macroinvertebrates that we did find there were mostly low dissolved oxygen tolerant bugs such as blood midges, leeches, and black flies, which you can see here they're either tolerant or fairly tolerant to pollution. And then when we went to Miles Crossing, we found a lot more diversity of macroinvertebrates there, such as caddisflies, black flies, and leeches, which are very tolerant, but they were more moderately and fairly tolerant than just tolerant and fairly tolerant. And you can see up here that at Silverbow Creek at Rocker, the macroinvertebrate count was still poor, and at Miles Crossing, it was only fair. So it's still not where we would like it to be. But I think that that might have something to do with why the fish aren't there, is that there are more diversity of bugs here than there are there. And then the next thing that we looked at were the riparian vegetation at each site. And as I mentioned before, Silverbow Creek at Miles Crossing is a newly restored reach, and it looks like it's newly restored there, whereas at Silverbow Creek and Rocker, it looks like it's been restored quite a while ago. So at Silverbow Creek at Rocker, the ground cover they had a lot more ground cover than Silverbow Creek at Miles Crossing, which the only reason that I think for that is because that Silverbow Creek at Miles Crossing is newly restored and it hasn't had enough time to grow yet. And then the last thing that we looked at, and the one that actually gave the biggest results, were the stream beds. And stream beds have a lot to do with whether fish are there or not, whether they have basically a habitat to live in, where if there's just silt and sand, the fish won't be there as much as if there's pebble and bedrock, which has been a proven study that's been done over and over again, so we know that already. And at Silverbow Creek in Rocker versus Miles Crossing, there were a lot more silt and sand versus Silverbow Creek at Miles Crossing, where there weren't as much silt and sand and there was more pebble and rock. But at neither site did we find bedrock, which is the big rock where you could literally park a car on it. So that was the biggest difference that I saw from my data, but really my conclusion overall is that I need to do more research if I want to prove my hypothesis that the reason they're there is because it has something to do with the 5 C's, which are cold, clean, clear, complex, and connected, which we looked at through all of these, which was the complex part of it. So that's all.